The moment of glory for the mechanic has arrived, and just this one fight scene alone ensures that this film will not be poorly rated. The story is set in Barcelona, with the main character named Max, a top fighter in a local gang. Recently, their gang has been busy with election campaigning, as the secret council held every 2 years is about to take place. This council will vote for the leader of all local gangs. The boss's son, Lucero, quickly became active, using money to bribe other gangs to vote for him, ensuring that he would take the next leadership position. As the prince's bodyguard, Max is always by his side. Lucero had finalized a deal with the Colombians, who would cast the crucial vote for him once they received the money. Both sides toasted, seemingly sealing a very pleasant transaction. However, when the Colombian opened the bag, it turned out to be his son's head. Upon hearing the strange noise from upstairs, Max immediately sprang into action swiftly, taking out all the henchmen around him. He is the adopted son of the boss, Lucafu, with Lucero being his brother by name. But Max knew nothing of the cold-blooded plan that was unfolding that day. He thought he was there to protect his brother's safety. Meanwhile, Lucero's real objective was to wipe out the Colombian gang. Once the plan succeeded, they could step on the bodies of their enemies to rise to a higher position, becoming the undisputed king of the underground world of Barcelona. At that point, the surrounding smaller gangs, wanting to survive, would have no choice but to obediently vote for him. This beheading tactic was far more brutal than bribing with money. The two stormed straight into the Colombian factory, mercilessly killing both guards and workers. To Lucero, these people's lives were merely stepping stones for him to reach the top. When he struck, his expression was cold, devoid of emotion. Max, as his most loyal right-hand man, could only shoot at every moving shadow. When all the Greek resisting enemies had fallen, Lucero still didn't stop. He aimed his gun at the workers who had long since surrendered, sparing no one, even the boss of the Colombian gang who had blended into the crowd. Seeing Lucero remain calm after killing so many people, Max felt, for the first time, that he was a stranger. This moment completely solidified his earlier decision: retire from the battle and live a peaceful life. This time, Lucero did not stop him. The two quietly embraced amidst the sea of corpses and blood. With this silent embrace, they ended more than 10 years of brotherhood, fighting side by side in the underworld. However, the peaceful days Max had hoped for did not come. Instead, disaster struck. Not long after, boss Lucafu hurriedly arrived. Seeing the mess his son had caused, he became furious. A small issue that could have been resolved with a little money had cost the lives of so many people. If everything were to be exposed, not only would they lose their chance to run for office, but they would also be hunted down by the secret council. At that point, everyone would have to be buried with him. Lucafu was extremely agitated, even harboring some hatred toward his son for not turning out the way he had hoped. His reproach felt like a match, instantly igniting the resentment that had built up in Lucero's heart for years. He was supposed to be the rightful heir, but his father favored the adopted children Maria and Max, while sending him to Japan to suffer. Now, he had come to terms with it. So, what if they grew up together? Anyone who threatened his position, he would kill. With his words, it was clear he had already prepared himself for the possibility of killing his father. At this moment, Max had returned home. He had promised his son that once he retires from the battle and lives a peaceful life, he would take him away from this place. Since his wife's death, he had been waiting for this day for 3 long years. He handed the house key to the braiding nanny and asked her to pass it to the landlord. But as soon as the nanny turned away, she used the key to exchange for a large sum of money, and Max soon heard a noise outside the door. He told his son to run and rushed to lock the door. It didn't take a genius to guess that these people must have been sent by Lucero to secure his position as boss. He had to ruthlessly eliminate any opposition. Max was very strong, arguably at the peak of his abilities. Even many armed fighters couldn't get close to him. But what good was his strength? In the face of gunfire, he was utterly defenseless. He watched as his son was killed before his very eyes. No father could bear such pain. Before leaving, the assassin set off an explosion that destroyed the entire house to eliminate any evidence. But they didn't know that Max was still alive. It was Maria who saved him from the flames. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed, and the election day for the secret council was fast approaching. During these 2 years, hatred became Max's only motivation. He trained relentlessly day and night. Every punch and every knife strike was fueled by his burning hatred for Lucero. He was waiting for an opportunity to send Lucero to hell. At this point, we shift the focus to another male protagonist, Leo. He was a university student, but to support his family, he had to secretly work as a gopher for a local gang, selling drugs. This part-time job offered a decent income, but it was incredibly dangerous. His father passed away early, his grandfather was old and weak, and his younger brother was still small. His mother couldn't work at all. The burden of the whole family weighed heavily on his young shoulders. Leo worked very hard, but selling drugs in another gang's territory was a serious taboo. One evening, after finishing his work and preparing to head home, he was suddenly blocked by 2 burly men. They not only beat Leo but also wanted to take the money from his drug sales. Leo struggled with all his might. This money was the living expenses for his family for an entire week. If it was taken, his family would go hungry. Just when things seemed hopeless, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Max, who stepped in to save Leo. To thank Max for saving his life, Leo followed him all the way to an old garage. Max saw that Leo was stubborn and lonely, and eventually softened, pulling him into the garage and even helping him treat the wound on his head. Max appeared calm, but inside, his emotions were storming. If his son had been alive, he would have been as tall as Leo now. On the other side, Lucero was also busy preparing. With the election for the council approaching, this time he didn't step forward himself. Instead, he sent his subordinates to raid a casino controlled by an Asian gang. These men were extremely violent, like demons possessing their bodies, taking all the gamblers hostage and forcing the person behind the gang to reveal themselves. What no one expected was that the person who had been controlling the Asian gang for many years was a woman. This shocked Finito greatly. His subordinate connected a video call with Lucero. He had not shown himself in Barcelona for 2 years, and now he was reaching out to her to get her vote in the election. She mocked Lucero for hiding like a dirty rat and not daring to appear in person. Lucero replied that he was not hiding but was simply enjoying some relaxation time with his family. She said she respected Lucero's father because he was a good man, but she would never support Lucero and told him not to dream. Since no agreement could be made, Lucero couldn't be bothered to waste any more words. For those who disobeyed, Lucero would never let them live, and Finito was more than willing to help his boss send these insubordinate rivals to the afterlife. In the following days, Max often stayed with Leo. Leo helped him adjust the guitar that his son had left behind. Their bond gradually grew closer. Witnessing Max's skills, Leo took the initiative to ask him to teach him some self-defense moves. Max didn't refuse, and took him to practice on the punching bags. He even taught Leo his own unique techniques. Over the past 2 years, Leo was the only person who made Max feel at ease. Before they parted ways, Leo wrote down his contact information on a piece of paper and gave it to Max, hoping they could meet again someday. This gesture made Max reflect even more. His son had always liked doing the same thing before. On the other side, Lucero's plan was still in progress. This time, he shifted his focus to the Russian gang. He prepared to send people to their territory, deliberately causing trouble. As soon as the Russians made a move, he would have an excuse to start a full-scale war. Even the secret council would not be able to fault him. Similar to the tactic he used with the Colombians before, by suppressing the Russian gang, there would be no obstacles left in his bid for power. However, what no one expected was that the task Lucero assigned to his subordinate, Jaro, ended up falling onto Leo's lap. It turned out that the drugs Leo was selling were always sourced from Jaro. This time, Jaro called Leo, asking him to sell the goods in the Russian gang's territory, basically wanting to use Leo as a pawn. Leo directly hung up, refusing to be part of the scheme. This infuriated Jaro. That night, he led a group of men to ambush Leo. Feeling something was wrong, Leo turned and ran. He sped away on his balancing bike, weaving through the busy crowd and then heading downhill. It seemed like he was about to escape, but Jaro blocked him from the other side. For those who dared to resist, Jaro never showed mercy. To teach Leo a lesson, he slammed Leo's arm with the car door, wanting him to understand that only by obeying could he survive. The next day, Max was cleaning his son's guitar when he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Opening it, he saw a young woman. She was Leo's girlfriend. Since Leo hadn't shown up for several days, she wanted to ask if he had been there. Seeing Max's silence, she said, "If you see Leo, tell him to text me." After saying that, she got on her balancing bike and left. Max felt uneasy and sent a text to Leo. The two met at an old church on the outskirts of the city. Leo's hand was badly injured, and Max urged him to go to the hospital, warning that it could be serious if there were lasting effects. Leo refused, fearing that if he went, they would call his mother, something he wanted to avoid to prevent conflict with her. Hearing this, Max reluctantly took out his phone and made a call. Soon, Maria arrived. Honestly, besides her, Max couldn't think of anyone else who could help. When Maria arrived, she seemed irritated. The election was approaching, and Max had been distracted by someone unrelated. She honestly didn't understand his reasoning. But even though she did not was angry, Maria still chose to help Leo. She understood why Max was helping him, and empathized with his longing for his son. To get justice for Leo, Max turned and went to the nightclub where Jaro often hung out. Jaro didn't know Max at all. Waiting for Jaro to come out of the restroom, Max wasted no time and launched into a series of swift punches and kicks. Hearing the noise, Jaro's men outside rushed in to surround him. One of them recognized Max and, frightened, turned to flee the crowd. But the remaining thugs, unaware of Max's strength, charged at him, only to be knocked out one by one. During this, Max learned that Jaro was a subordinate of Lucero. He had initially planned to let him go, but the name Lucero acted like a match, immediately igniting the fury inside him. Max then used the exact same tactics Jaro had used on Leo to pay him back in full. After finishing up the aftermath, Max returned to where Maria was. She had bandaged Leo's wound. The boy was curled up, sleeping soundly in the living room. In the training room, the sound of fists and feet colliding was constant. On the surface, the two brothers were practicing martial arts, but their minds were focused entirely on the information they had just received. Maria began to scold Max, saying that the revenge they had been preparing for 2 years was on the verge of completion. They were just waiting for the day of the council election to take action. If the plan failed because of a stranger, it would allow Lucero to sit in the position of power effortlessly. At that point, no matter how vast the world was, there would be no place for them to hide. They would have to scurry like rats. Max knew this well. He had already made up his mind. Once things were settled for Leo, he would focus all his energy on the final plan. But what he didn't expect was that the turmoil at the nightclub had stirred up even bigger waves. Jaro had told Finito everything that had happened at the nightclub about the man named Max and how he had easily taken down their whole crew. The more Finito thought about it, the worse it seemed. Hearing this name, Finito grabbed a cloth and covered Jaro's mouth, his eyes flashing with killing intent. Years ago, Lucero had sent him to eliminate Max, and now Max was still alive. Before Finito took action to kill Max again, no one was allowed to reveal this information, and the one who knew the most would be the first to die. Just like that, Jaro's struggles gradually stopped. Finito released him, and his eyes turned cold as ice. At that moment, Max was taking Leo back home. On the way, he sensed something was off, and immediately noticed a car parked not far away, watching them. He told Leo to wait, while he walked toward the car. After checking the target's chat log, it was clear they were being watched. Max was extremely cautious, but the sound of cartoons coming from inside the house made Leo lose all sense of danger. Ignoring Max's warnings, Leo pushed open the door and walked inside. Indeed, the TV was playing cartoons, but what awaited them inside was far from innocent. Leo's younger brother was lying in a pool of blood, lifeless. His grandfather, who had been nearby, was also dead. Finito and his men stepped out from the shadows, clearly waiting for them. When enemies meet, their eyes burned with hatred. Max's son had been killed by these very people. He was filled with rage, wanting nothing more than to tear the bastard apart. But his anger caused him to make a mistake, leaving an opening for Finito to stab him with a knife. Seeing the dangerous situation, Leo grabbed the pistol from the ground and fired a full clip at Finito. Though he couldn't take the bastard down, he was able to push Finito back and save Max. That day, Leo became an orphan. All his family had been taken from him in the most tragic way possible. The pain was unbearable for a college student. That evening, Maria helped Max treat his wounds. Troubles of the day were all due to Max's stubbornness. If he hadn't insisted on helping Leo, they wouldn't have been exposed. But it was too late to say these things now. The enemy was ready to ambush them, and it wouldn't be as easy as before. Max didn't want to dwell on it. He shaved off his long hair, knowing the storm was coming, and he needed to face it head on. Not long after, while Maria was tracking Finito's phone, she discovered that Lucero had ordered a hit, instructing Finito to destroy Max at all costs. The Vanguard squad had already been sent, heading straight for Max's garage. Upon hearing this, Max remained calm and unafraid. When the first group of assassins entered the garage, they couldn't see where Max was hiding. Max moved like a ghost through the darkness, each appearance accompanied by a sound and a body falling to the ground. He moved with terrifying speed, taking down 5 men in the blink of an eye. Just as he finished off one wave, another immediately rushed in. Max grabbed the bolt cutters nearby, beginning to release the fury building inside him. He no longer avoided confrontation, but instead began facing the enemy head-on. He channeled all his hatred into every punch, the garage echoing with bone-shattering impacts and sharp, piercing screams. He was like a wild beast fully triggered, reckoning all the debts of the past years on these henchmen. When the last one fell, the garage was filled with the strong scent of blood, and Max's calm face stood in stark contrast. He looked at the scene before him, knowing full well that the place had been compromised and they couldn't stay any longer. The days of passive waiting had to end. Just then, a message from Maria arrived. She had discovered that Lucero owned a nightclub, a front for money laundering, and it stored over $70 million in cash money he had been preparing for his election campaign. If they could take it down, it would be like cutting off one of Lucero's limbs, and it would drive him mad. This was a great idea. Max steered the car directly toward the target. He stopped in front of the nightclub and decisively handled the 2 guards. He strode inside, Maria's calm and clear voice in his earpiece. She had hacked into the nightclub's surveillance system, providing real-time coordinates of the enemy for Max. They worked in perfect sync, and the next part of the operation unfolded like a meticulously choreographed dance of death. 2 years of hiding and training meant that every strike Max made was aimed precisely at the vital points, with no wasted motion. He was like a tiger descending the mountain, an unstoppable force, effortlessly taking down everyone in his path. After controlling the accountant who was trying to escape, Max hung a phone around his neck and asked him to deliver a message to Lucero. He asked head or heart. The henchmen outside were preparing to move the money elsewhere, but Max was quicker. He took down the asses, the remaining men blocking the money, and ordered the surviving accountant to empty the vault into a cart. Max then drove the car back to their base. During the chaotic battle, Max had been shot in the leg. The situation was urgent, and he didn't want to numb the pain with anesthesia, fearing that the enemy might arrive and he wouldn't be able to fight back. Leo thought he was being foolish. Without hesitation, he grabbed a syringe and injected Max's muscle near the wound with a sedative. Soon, Max slipped into a deep sleep. Such a large sum of money being stolen was bound to set Lucero off. Furious, he rushed back to Barcelona, planning to meet with his long-lost younger brother in person. Lucero met with the accountant, his mind already on the edge from the colossal amount of cash that had been stolen. When he heard the deadly question, head or heart, delivered by the accountant, the last strand of rational thought snapped completely. In a fit of rage, he drew his dagger and personally ended the unlucky messenger's life. Meanwhile, Maria had just unlocked Finito's location when Leo, sitting nearby, was struck by the haunting image of his family's massacre. The desire for revenge consumed him. Taking advantage of Maria's deep sleep, he stealthily took the gun and car keys from the table and set off alone to the location displayed on the computer. Naively, he thought that armed with a gun, he could end his pain, but what he didn't realize was that his reckless, impulsive action would put everyone in even greater danger. Finito caught Leo and beat him mercilessly. He didn't care that Leo was just a young boy. Leo had no strength to resist and was battered and bruised all over. His illusions of revenge shattered. Just then, Maria woke up and saw the clear tracking information on the screen. When she noticed that the gun and car keys were gone, her heart sank. Max was still asleep. Under the effects of the anesthesia, only Leo could have taken them. In a panic, she rushed to the marked location, calling Leo repeatedly, but all she heard was the busy signal. At that moment, Leo was at the mercy of Finito, who had a gun pointed at his head. In that desperate moment, Maria arrived just in time. She slammed the car into the scene, pulled a dazed Leo out of the vehicle, grabbed the gun that Finito had dropped, but didn't shoot him. Instead, she used the opportunity to help Leo regain some consciousness and escape the scene. On the way, she tried calling Max, but his phone was unreachable. The anesthesia had yet to wear off. With no other choice, Maria took Leo to the nearest hospital, unaware that one of Finito's men had followed them there. Leo was severely injured, but Max's phone still wouldn't connect. Desperate, Maria left a voicemail detailing everything that had happened, including the hospital's location. What she didn't know was that Finito had arrived at the hospital. At the same time, Lucero's top fighter, Zioan, known for his exceptional stealth, had quietly tracked down the brothers' hiding place. The blaring alarm in the villa awoke Max from his drug-induced sleep. In the hallway, Max came face-to-face with Zioan for the first time in 2 years. They had grown up together and had once been the most trusted subordinates of Lukafu. If Max had not retired from the underworld, he would have been the boss, and Zioan would have been his right-hand man. But now, they were enemies. There was no more time for words. Having chosen to follow Lucero, Zioan knew his duty was to do what a subordinate must do. The two lowered their guns, intending to settle things with their bare hands. But this battle was never going to be fair. The gunshot wound to Max's leg had severely slowed him down. After several rounds, Zioan completely overpowered Max, forcing him back with every move. Max's body was battered by heavy punches, and it seemed like he could barely stay on his feet. As he neared the sucking his feet point of collapse, Max began to show signs of weakness. However, Zioan didn't realize that this feigned vulnerability was Max's way of luring him into revealing Lucero's position. Now that Max had gathered the necessary information, it was time to end it. With a quick thrust of his dagger, Max pierced Zioan's carotid artery, and his life came to an abrupt end. Meanwhile, Lucero had arrived at the election venue with a large group of his subordinates. He was prepared, certain that this time, he would claim the title of the new ruler of the underworld. But as he entered the elevator, Max's phone call rang through. It was clear without thinking Zioan hadn't killed Max, and without retrieving the money, Lucero's election would not be smooth. The outcome of this game had already been sealed 2 years ago. When he sent his men to kill Max's son, it had set the stage for a bitter battle between the brothers, one that would end in bloodshed. Before heading to the council, Max visited the hospital as per Maria's message. He glanced at Leo one last time, unsure whether he would survive to return. This farewell might very well be the last one. Max then drove to the venue for the council, clearing his path by eliminating anyone who dared to stand in his way. He moved like death itself, every obstacle becoming a soul claimed by his blade, dissolving into dust in this vast world. Today, he had to settle all scores, to repay the injustices and hatred that had been inflicted on him 2 years ago by Lucero. He seized the gun from one of Lucero's henchmen without hesitation, firing it at them. From the moment they became Lucero's accomplices, their fate was sealed. But when faced with his former close comrade, the one with whom he had fought side by side many years ago, Max dropped his weapon, and Rafa, too, refrained from shooting his old friend. However, at that moment, one of Lucero's men suddenly pulled the pin on a grenade. Max immediately ducked behind Rafa, relying on him to absorb the impact of the blast. He hadn't avenged his son yet, and he couldn't die now. When Max stepped into the grand hall of the council, he saw that Lucero was already waiting for him. Clearly, Lucero understood that this battle was inevitable, and he had prepared everything, just waiting for Max to arrive. There was no more room for words. The only thing left was to resolve this with the most direct means possible. Both men drew their knives and rushed toward each other. The sound of metal clashing rang out throughout the hall. They both poured all their strength into every strike, aiming for each other's vulnerable spots, wishing to bring their opponent down with one blow. Max got distracted for a moment, and Lucero slashed his thigh. Then, Lucero kicked him off the high platform. But the wound meant nothing to Max, it only reignited his fighting spirit. It seemed like Max would be the one to win, but unexpectedly, Lucero called for Finito. Finito appeared, gripping Maria by the throat. Seeing his sister in the hands of the enemy, Max had no choice but to abandon his defiance, enduring Lucero's rain of blows. Just as Max was on the verge of being overwhelmed, Maria suddenly elbowed Finito, taking the opportunity to snatch his weapon. A shootout erupted immediately, but with a full clip fired, neither of them hit their target. Maria then quietly moved to the side. With a powerful strike, she tackled Finito, sending both of them tumbling from the second floor to the ground. What was unbelievable was that, despite falling from such a height, Finito quickly regained his footing. Lucero handed Max over to Finito, instructing him to finish the job that had been left incomplete 2 years ago. Meanwhile, he pulled Maria aside, forcing her to witness Max's execution with her own eyes. But in the final moments, Max exploded with strength, landing a punch that killed Finito instantly. Maria kicked Lucero's lighter away and stood up, launching a relentless assault on him. Max, seeing this, joined the battle to avenge his son and to take revenge for his adoptive father. They had endured for 2 long years, waiting every day and night for this moment. They had sworn to send the demon who killed their father to hell. Now, the anger that had been building up for 2 years finally erupted. Both of them drew their knives, preparing to take down the evil that had tormented them. When Lucero finally fell, the blood feud was avenged. They had triumphed. Now, they could breathe freely, ready to start a new life. In the end, they picked Leo up from the hospital and drove off with a cart full of cash, planning to find a quiet place and begin their new journey as a family of 3. Xtreme, 2021, was not only a visually stunning action film, but it also delved into the core themes of revenge, loyalty, family, and humanity. The film offered both exhilarating action and emotional depth, providing a thought-provoking business experience that was as fulfilling as it was visually satisfying, a rare and valuable work worth sharing. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.